Cascades of Crimson Cruor is the debut full-length from Finnish-American black metal band Verilu Veriluola. Yeah, let's call them Veriluola. That's as close as we're going to get at this point. So, the basic idea of this band is that they are tapping into an early 90s style of black metal that is not necessarily uh, decided upon in terms of what the black metal zeitgeist before it formed, where elements of thrash metal and death metal and heavy metal were still very important in creating a style that was ideologically nonconformist. Now, the uncertainty is of that time period and that style is a very difficult thing to reproduce. A lot of bands certainly lean into the advent of what I would consider bestial death metal, the Archcoat and the Beherit and the Blasphemy style, whereas that is some of what this is in terms of these slower paced songs and the first EP. Really, what this sounds a lot more like is Secret Sudara from uh, Mortuary Drape and Ritual from Master's Hammer. There definitely is that cryptic register and deliberate style of sort of riff and more of a death metal vocal overall. In terms of this release, they've added the vocalist and guitarist from Apaka, Apaka into the group, and there's a lot of things that I could liken this sound to, and I think that starting with Mortuary Drape and Master's Hammer is effective, but there is a little bit of death metal in there too, and if you're a fan of Sacrifix, or even Verathron, Grand Belial's Key, Denial of God, you're kind of getting a sense with all these that these are bands that have a strong heavy metal influence, a black metal influence, and a death metal influence, and all of that is informing sophisticated melodic phrasing written for two guitars, and that is really the the compound that this relies upon for its substance. So we'll get into a clip that sort of showcases this sound up front. So whereas the first demo from this band certainly leaned into a little bit more of a visceral, but still sophisticated style of black metal that was ancient, this record really concerns itself with pulling off the more sophisticated mid-paced black metal ideas and or black death metal ideas, which are really written around melodies and guitar melodies at that. So the sort of monotone, mostly vocal style of this record and its deeper bark reminded me of Kaz Grant in Crucifier most of the time. And this is mostly effective, but if you go back to a record like Stranger Than Passing Time, it's sort of like that you've hit the fast forward button on what Veriluola is doing, in the sense that it is very tentatively paced. It is quite slow and lumbering most of the time. And that's not to say there aren't bursts of speed and points of strong resonance in that slower speed, but it all comes at a similar pace. And in a way that is very thoughtful and artfully constructed, and I would say generally transfixing in a full listen. I think that the voice carries on throughout the whole thing. It is about 35 minutes long from what I remember. And this really works for the record in terms of a consistent kind of barbaric, cryptic voice until we get to the Impish Insurrection, a 10-minute long piece that sort of flounders a bit and doesn't ever reach a point of charm that justifies its length. So I appreciate what they did with that song, but some of my favorite bands like Christ Agony, and I flip over to like Unholy Union in the middle of listening to this very long song, and realizing that this is not quite as ambitious or thoughtful or deeply composed as it builds itself up to be, compared to a lot of what's been done in the past in these similar headspace. So there is a unique voice to this that they find in the ancient style that they're pursuing. But that isn't to say that this band is all the way there yet. And I think that also shows up in some of the, I think probably programmed drums and just kind of the simple nature of the whole thing. It's just it's very sophisticated again in its melodic voicing, but it is definitely like a very deep underground statement that is certainly for a certain type of fan who are looking for this type of melody and ancient black metal sound. I don't think that it has quite enough conviction in its performance that it really blew me away as much as it should. And as a big fan of this style, and I have a lot of enthusiasm for this type of music, I think that they've shown that they can do it. But this isn't quite the point of greatness yet. This is the first step, and it's a pretty considerable one. I think they have a lot of style that they can build upon here, and see where they go from there. So it is a moderately high recommendation for me. There's a lot more particulars and details in the written review if you want to check that out, and the record will be out next week.
Eternity